Hello, welcome back to Bebop Review. We're just continuing with 7th chords. We're going to talk about tensions in this lesson. Now I just want to tell you something before we start this. If you see these chord symbols here, C minor, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7, A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished or whatever you want to call it, you've only got to see those symbols and you can play these tensions I'm going to show you on those chords. You don't have to, say you're playing a C major 7, right, and I'll say you can play a 9th tension on there. You can play that 9th tension, but it doesn't have to be C major 9. Do you know what I mean? It can be C major 7 and you can play a 9th tension. I'm showing you what the tensions can be played if you just see these symbols, okay? So we'll move on to the first chord, which will be C major 7, this one here. Okay, so here we are at the first chord, which is C major 7, which is built on obviously the first degree of the C major scale. Built, I said, not derived from. It's built from the first degree. Right, so we've got this chord, which is C major 7, and we are going to have a look at what the tensions are. So let's just alter this picture. Okay, so as you can see, I've actually changed the screen a bit, so I'll try and explain to you how I'm going to do this. If you look at these arrows are pointing to the spaces between the C major chord, C major 7 chord, and this is where you can have the tensions. If it were a 6th chord, you would that as 6, there won't be a gap there, because between G and A there's no gap, it's just a straight note, isn't it, up there? So you can only have a 9th and 11th on a 6th chord. I'll let you work the 6th chord. I didn't do the tensions on 6th chords because I want you to work them out yourself, because it's really easy. What I'm doing it is I'm showing you on 7th chords because it's a little bit harder, and then you can go back and do the 6th chord yourself. I think it's a bit too simple to show you the 6th chord tensions. So the tensions are between these spaces here, right? Now I've written the scale out here twice. Now why have I done that? This top line here, this C major scale on this top line here, C, D, F, G, A, B, C, this is the key that we are in. This is what these chords come from, right? Now when you're working tensions out, you also have to look at what the tension is called. And here you have to do it from looking at the major scale of the root of the chord. Now the root of that chord is also C major, so we write down the C major scale. If it was a different chord, we would write a different scale down, okay? Okay, so I've circled these numbers, so I'm looking here, we're going to put a 9th down, which is a D. Now I want to know what it's called, this 9th, so I'm looking down here to see what the 9th looks like from the root chord. Well, it's obviously C major, so it's the same letter, so it is going to be called a 9th there, so we can actually put that in as a 9th, okay? So I've put that in as a 9th, so the 9th is a D. Now is that note alright? Well, the thing is, to actually look to see if a tension is nice, what you do is you look at the distance between that C and that D. If the interval is a major 9th, then the tension is okay. This is the rule. People say it's because it sounds alright, which it does, it sounds alright. If you put a minor 9th there, it sounds harsh. But the thing is, minor 9th actually sound okay on other chords, mainly dominant chords. But on a major chord, right, it has to be a major 9th, the tension. So that distance is a major 9th, so a 9th is okay. So on a C major 7th chord, you can play a 9th, which would be the D, anytime you want. So on any major 7th chord, whatever, you know, whatever, if it's number 1, this is if it's the chord number 1, you can always play a 9th, okay? So let's have a look at the next tension, okay? Which will be, looking above that E, would be an F. We're looking at this F here, okay? So we're looking at this F here, okay? So if we look down here at this F, we also get another F, so it's definitely going to be called F, so we'll just put that in and see what we get. Now if we look at that interval, right, we've actually got, the F's in, but we've got an interval of a minor 9th, and a minor 9th is considered harsh, right, in this context as chord 1. Right, because remember that a chord 1 is a tonic chord, it's a chord of rest, and you don't want a chord of rest to sound weird as though it wants to move on, and putting a minor 9 thing is it makes it unstable and it kind of like wants to move on. So So we said that we don't have this F because we don't like this minor 9th, so that's out. Now the thing about this is in our music today, i.e. functional harmony. But if you were playing atonal music, right, which hasn't really got a key, and you were playing something that were a bit weird, like you might be able to play that F, you know. If you're playing Ornette Coleman's music, you could play an F, you know, if the piano player decides he wants to play something like a C chord. You know, it's just the music and how the music moves in avant-garde, you know, like free jazz is more important. But we're talking about, in this course, we're talking about functional harmony, and that is not allowed in functional harmony. A minor 9th is considered too harsh on a tonic sounding chord. Okay, so let's move on to the next. So move on to next tension, which would be this A, which I've circled here. Okay, so we'll have a look, see what that looks like. Well, this is this is called a 13th, right? We had a look there. It's A down there, so that's what they call it. So it's a 13th, and that's okay because A is a major 9th above that G. So the tensions that you can have, the natural tensions on a major 7th chord, are a 9th and a 13th, and you can play that on any major 7th chord that is the first chord of the key. That is, if it's a 1 chord. As you'll see later on, the other chords, which the major 7th chord also appears on chord number 4. The tensions may be different, which we'll look at in a sec. Okay, so let's move on now to chord number 2, which is the minor chord here. Okay, so we're looking at chord number 2, which is D minor 7 on C major scale. Right, if you look, we've written it down exactly the same as we did before. This is the C major scale, this is the key that we're in. But this is the scale, the major scale, that is from the root of the chord that we're in. Because we have to use this scale to name these tensions, or even the names of the chords that we've done here. So if you look at D, D is the same in C and D major. But when we get to the third, which is F, there's an F in C major, it is F sharp in D major. Therefore we call it a flat third, right? The 5th is the same, A in both, right? But the 7th, right, which is a C in the key of C major, right, is C sharp in D major, so we call it a flat 7th, okay? And we have to do the same thing when we do the tensions. So we look exactly the same as we did before. The tensions appear between the actual gaps between the chords, so between the D and the F, so you can have an E, an F and an A, which could be a G, and an A and a C, which could be a B. Okay, so let's have a look at the first tension now. So we're looking at C, right? So we look at E in C major, right? And now we're looking at it in D major, and it is an E, which means it is going to be called a 9th. So we put it in as a 9th. Now we're checking to see if it's a major 9th above that D, and it is. So that's allowed. So you can play a 9th on a D minor chord, or chord number 2 in a major key. So let's have a look at the next tension, which will be a G, won't it? Be the 11th. So I'm looking at this G here, right, in C major, and I'm looking at it in D major here, the bottom one, which is the root of this chord, to see what it's called. And they both match, so it's definitely going to be called an 11th. So let's shove that. And that G we've put in is a full tone major 9th above that F, so that's allowed. So 11th is allowed on a number 2 chord in this major key. So now let's have a look at the next one, which would be a B between these two. Okay, so the B here, right, also matches this B here, so it is going to be called a 13th, isn't it? So let's put it in. So looking at that B, it's a definite major 9th above that A, isn't it? So it's okay to play. However, if you look at that B, it's creating a tritone with that F there, because FAC, F to C, is a major 5th, and that's half a step below, so it's a tritone, isn't it, or a minor 5th. Now the thing is, a minor 5th is a sound that is associated with a dominant 7th chord, And because of that, you're kind of like anticipating moving into a dominant 7. Because in functional harmony, this chord number 2, D minor, is actually a subdominant chord. That is, it's a preparation chord. It's preparing to move on. And if you put that B in it in functional harmony, you're making that subdominant chord sound like a dominant chord. You're kind of not making it into a preparation chord, but you're actually making it into a tension chord. So usually we don't play that B at all. It's not wrong, it's just that it'll give you the wrong sound. However, another however coming in. However, if you're playing in Dorian mode, so you're just playing over like a D minor chord continuous, you would play that B because that B in Dorian mode distinguishes the Dorian mode from a minor mode, because D minor would have a B flat there, you see, but a Dorian, this is what I'm talking about, D natural minor. D natural minor is related to the key of F, isn't it? So that would be a B flat. But in a Dorian mode, which is related to this C major, although not the same, it's got this B. So it's important, that note, in a Dorian mode. So if you're playing modal music, you want to be playing that B. However, in functional harmony, it's best to avoid that note, even though it actually doesn't sound bad. In fact, I'll just show you, because Adam Neely actually says it in one of his videos. I'll just put a little bit of Adam Neely in now, so it shows you, so you can see it for yourself. Okay.
Now notice that we analyzed the B as an S6 and not as a tension 13. Why is that? It should be a tension 13 because it's a whole step above a chord tone. Now, going back to our original definition of tensions and scale degrees, we remember that scale degrees are notes which obscure the chord function, and tensions are ones that don't obscure the chord function. They just add color. So if we take a look at a functional context, in other words, a 2-5-1 chord progression, and then we look at the distance between B and F, in other words, the S6 and the minor third of the D minor 7 F, we get a tritone. Now, this tritone is the characteristic sound of a 5-7 that governs the tension release pattern of 5 going to 1. So what all this means is that if we include the B on a 2 minor 7, it's not necessarily going to sound like a 2. It's going to kind of sound like a 5. So if I play a regular 2-5-1 without the B, you can hear it very clearly that that's a 2-5-1. But if I include the B on the D minor 7, it's a little more obscure. It kind of sounds like, oh, is that 5 over the 5th, or is it a 2?
So we're looking now at chord 3 in the key of C major, which is going to be E minor 7, right? So we'll have a look at the tensions on this chord. As you can see, we've done exactly the same as we've done before. Up here we've got the C major scale. This is what key we're in, and down here we have the key of E, or the scale of E major, right, to tell us what we call these notes. And as you can see, E is the same, so that's a first, right? But if you look at the third, which is a G in C major, it's a sharp G in E minor, so this G has got to be called a flat third because we're calling it in relation to this key. The fifth is B, same in both keys, but the D in the E major, sorry, is a D sharp. In the scale of C major, on the other hand, it's a D natural, so this D natural has got to be called a flat 7 because we're relating everything to this scale, you see. The tensions appear between the actual notes of the chord, as we've said in the others. So we'll have a look at the first tension, which will be this F, won't it? So if we look at the F in the C major scale, it's an F, right? But if you look in the E major, it's F sharp. So this F that we're going to add is going to have to be a flat 9, not a ninth. If it was an F sharp, it'd be called a ninth, but because it's an F, it's going to be called a flat ninth. Okay, so let's put that in, that flat ninth, see what happens. Now looking at that flat 9, you can see straight away that it's actually a minor ninth above that E, above the root of the chord. And we don't like minor ninths on minor chords, so it just doesn't sound right, so we're gonna skip that. We don't like it, so it goes. Okay. So the next tension we're looking at is the 11th, which is an A. It's going to be an A, isn't it? Because it's between this G and B. So we look down here to the key of E major. It's also called an A, so it's definitely going to be called an 11th. So let's shove that in. Okay, I've got in, and it's a major ninth above that G, so that's okay. So an 11th on chord number 3, which is a minor 7th chord, is okay, isn't it? So let's move on to the next tension, which will be a 13th, which will be a C. Right, on the C major scale, the tone we're going to put in is this C. But if you look in E major, it's C sharp. The 13th would be a C sharp. So this has got to be called a flat 13th. But if you actually look at that C, that is a flat 13th, it's a minor 9th above that B. So I'm not even going to put it in. So 13th is out. So on an E minor chord, that is chord 3 in the key of C major, you can only have an 11th as a natural tension. Okay, so let's move on to the next chord. Okay, so now we're looking at chord number 4 in a major key, which in C major would be F major 7. And as you can see, I've written down again the scale of C major and F major, because this root is F now, so we've got the scale of F major we have to look at. So, and as you can see, the tensions appear between the notes of the chord. I'm sure you've got that now, so we'll go straight away and look at the first tension. So we're looking at this G, which will be the first tension because it's between the F and the A, isn't it? So this will be the 9th. So it's a G in the key of C major, which we are in. We're in the key of C major, but it's also a G also in the key of F, so it's going to be called a 9th. So let's shove that in, and as you can see, it's a full tone above that F, so there's no problem there. So a 9th is allowed on an F major 7 chord, or chord 4 in a major key. So let's have a look at the next one, which would be, so if we look at the B in the C major scale and look down at the F scale, we see that the B is actually a B flat. So this B in the C major scale is not the same as this in the F scale, F major scale. So we call this a sharp 11 because it's sharp up on this one. So let's put that in and see what happens. Okay, so I've put this sharp 11 in, this B, and as you can see, it is a full tone above that A. So the tension, the 11th tension on an F major chord in the key of C major, or the 4th chord in a C major scale, is a sharp 11. Do you notice how the tensions have changed from chord 1? In chord 1, the C major 7th scale, we could only have a 9th and a 13th, but in this one, it's the same chord, it's a major 7th chord, but because it is now chord 4, we can have this sharp and 11. So you've got to be careful about where the chord is, you know what I mean? This is why I keep saying to you, it's so important to put key signatures in, so you can identify where the chord is, what kind of chord it is, so you can put the right tensions in. And that tension is sharp 11. So let's move on now. Let's have a look at the next tension, which would be, so we're looking now at the 13th, which would be D. Well, it's a D in the C major scale. That's the note we're going to be using. But what's it called? It's a D there, so it's going to be called a 13th. So let's shove that in, see what we get. And as you can see, it's a full tone above that C. So 13th is also allowed. So the 4th chord of a major scale, which is a major 7th, right, you can have a 9th, a sharpened 11th, and a 13th. Okay, so you can have quite a few tensions on that. Again, look at the tensions, how they actually form in lots of different chords in a way. Because you've got F major, A minor, C major, E minor, G major, you know what I mean? There's lots of chords, so you've got to be careful when using tensions, that you don't want to be obscuring the sound that you might want to be getting if you're playing solos, you know what I mean? Okay, so let's move on to the next chord, okay? Okay, so now we're looking at the tensions on the G7 chord. G7 chord is chord number 5 in the key of C major. We do exactly the same as we did before. This is the key that we're in, C major, and we naming the tensions by the key of G major because the root of this chord is G. Okay, so the tensions appear in the same place between the chords, as we all know now. And the first tension that we're going for is the ninth, which is the A, because it's one tone above that G, or the note between there. It's an A in C major, and it's also an A in G major, so it will be called a ninth. So let's put that in. And as you can see, it's a major ninth above that G, so that's okay. The next tension will be 11th, which will be a C, because it's a note between there. It's a C in C major, and it's also a C in G major. So let's just have a look at that. So we've got the 11th in, but as you can see, it's a minor ninth above the B, the third. So we don't allow that, so I'm just going to cross that out. Now I've crossed that note out. However, you may see, the thing about a dominant 7th chord is it can take a lot of tension, so you can have quite a few tensions added to that. But I'm actually giving you the basic tensions in the key of C major. Now, a dominant 7th chord, if it's diatonic to the key, it can have the 9th, the sharp 11th, and the 13th. But it can also have an exception to the rule of a major 9th above a chord tone. So you can have flat 9, sharp 9, flat 5, which is the sharp 11, which I've just said, and a flat 13. So you can actually have quite a few tensions on a dominant 7th chord. But I'm giving you the basics here. As we go on in this course, you'll be able to see when you can use these other tensions. But at the moment, right, G7, right, in the key of C major, right, basic chords being played, do not play the 11th because it is a minor ninth above that B, the third. Okay, so I'm going to leave that crossed out, but I'm not going to take it away because I want to show you to leave that you can actually play sharp in 11 at certain times. Okay, so we'll go on to the next tension now. Right, the next tension, which is the 13th, is an E, and it's an E in C major, and it's also an E in G major, so it is going to be called a 13th. So let's put that in. And as you can see, it's a major ninth above that D, so 13th's okay. So in the key of C major, or in a major key, the 5th chord, you can have the 9th and the 13th. But like I say, you can have these options where you can actually have, on dominant chords, you can actually have more tensions if you want, but they are exceptions to rules, and we are talking about the rules here. We will talk about exceptions to the rules later on, but at the moment we're talking about the rules, and on the rules you can only have a 9th or a 13th on the dominant chord in a major key. Okay, so we'll move on to the next chord now. So here we are at chord number 6, which in C major is A minor 7. So let's have a look at the tensions on this chord. Same as before, C major scale here, this is the key we're in, A major here. So we look to see what these are called. As you can see, we've got a flat third, so that's what we call it. This is a G sharp, so this has got to be a flat 7. Okay, so let's have a look at the first tension then. First tension is going to be on this B, so we look down at the A, it's a B, so the 9th is definitely going to be called a B. So let's put that in. And as you can see, it is a major 9 above this A, so that's okay, isn't it? So let's look at the next tension. The next tension is this D, and we can see that it's a D in both keys. In the key of C major, it's a key, and what's it called? It's still a D. So the 11th is going to be a D, so let's put that in. As you can see, that's a major 9th above that C, so 11th is okay. Let's look at the next tension. Next tension is an F, right, in C major. So what's it going to be called? Well, it's an F sharp in A minor, so it's going to have to be called a flat. And as you can see, the flat 13 here is it's a minor 9th above that E, so that is out, isn't it? So I'll just cross that out. So there you are. That's the tensions that you can have on this chord number 6, which is a minor chord, right? You can have the 9th, which is a B on an A minor chord, and the D, which is 11th. Okay, so let's have a look at the next and last chord in the key of C major. Okay, so here we are at the last chord, which is B minor 7 flat 5, or B half diminished if you're American. So let's have a look at the tensions on this one, shall we? Same as before, we've got the key of C major here, and here we've got the key of B major to find out what the tensions are. And as you can see, we've got a flat 3rd because that's a D sharp, flat 5th because that's an F sharp, look, and a flat 7th because that's an A sharp. So it's quite different this one, isn't it? So let's see what the first tension is. So the first tension that we're looking at is this C. Now in C major it's just a C, but in B major it's C sharp, so it's got to be a flat 9. So let's have a look at that. As you can see, it's a flat 9, which is a minor 9th above this C. So that's out, isn't it? So we'll just cross that out, and now we'll go on to the next tension, which is this E, which will be the 11th. So let's see what that looks like. Obviously it's E in both, so it's going to be called 11th, isn't it? So that one's okay. So we've got the 11th. So let's have a look at the next one. Next tension will be 13th, which will be this G. Here it's G sharp, so it's going to have to be called a flat 13th. And as you can see, that G is a major 9th above that A, so it's okay. So flat 13 is okay. So on chord number 7, which is B minor 7 flat 5, or B half diminished if you're an American, in the key of C major, it's the tensions you can have are 11th and flat 13th. I hope we've been writing these tensions down so you can remember them. But the thing is, when you're going through some music, if you just follow this procedure that I've been showing you, that tensions are a major 9th above the actual chord tone, you should be okay. And remember that tensions are between these, so on a 6th chord you can only get 2 tensions. And the rules for more tensions are mainly to do with substitutions, which we'll talk about later on in this course. So that's it. I've done all the tensions for you. It's been quite difficult making this video, all this graphic stuff here, you know, all this kind of stuff to do. So it took me quite a bit of time. So I hope you appreciate that. So I'm going to leave off harmony for a bit, and we'll go and have a look at Barry Harris, I think, in the next video. So I'll see you in the next video. So keep practicing.